Welcome to Knicks Buzz. I'm CT, your host. With me, he needs no introduction. He's always got the streets buzzing, the busiest man covering the Knicks. We appreciate your time, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing great, CT. Nice to be back.
Yep. I was just saying to you before we come on, it's a year within a day covering the Knicks. It's like the last time we spoke. We touched on Kemba Walker winning the Player of the Week.
Yeah.
And as we foreshadowed, he's been in and out and in and out. And it looks like he may be returning soon.
Uh, he's right on the verge. He'll warm up before the game, like Evan Fournier warmed up before the San Antonio game and decided to play. And I think Kemba's ready. It's been 6 straight games. Hasn't played this year, technically. Shut down on New Year's Eve in Oklahoma after coming off that back-to-back, after coming off several games of heavy minutes. I think Thibodeau has learned his lesson. He's not going to play back to back the year, that's for sure. And I think Thibodeau's going to have to monitor those minutes. We'll grill him a lot before the game against Dallas on what the minutes restrictions could be. Because I honestly, his last answer to that a week ago was whatever he can handle. But I don't know how much he can handle. I think 20 minutes is a sweet spot for him right now.
Yep, absolutely. It's looking that way. And it's tough with the disruptions, the other team. Immanuel Quickley had a very admirable performance, couple in a row. We know he's a Thibs favorite. Do you see him starting some more or playing off the bench mostly?
Well, I was just writing up my midpoint report card for the Knicks newsletter this morning. And the one comment I had about Immanuel, and I gave him a terrific grade, was he's really progressed as a point guard. Last year, he was off the ball mostly as a 3-point shooter off the ball, but he's really running the offense and seeing the floor better. And he's always said to us since he got drafted here, I feel I am a point guard. NBA scouts didn't see him that way, but his 3-point shooting is only like 34.5%, which is a little low for him. But his court awareness as a point guard has been really strong. And I think when Kemba doesn't play, it is an option. I just don't like to see Alec Burks playing point guard. I mean, Thibodeau loves him. Again, when I was doing the report card, I said he's not really a point guard, and he has his best moments when he's playing the shooting guard swingman off the bench, and he's the best 3-point shooter on the team right now. But I really do see an option if Kemba is hurt and Derrick Rose is not with the team, that Immanuel could get some starts at the point guard position.
Yeah, I can see that happening definitely as he gets more confident, the playmaking, and his defense, Mark. His defense has gotten more impressive. I'm not sure if it's putting on the size or some muscle, but he's definitely become a better defender.
Yeah, you do see a noticeable difference in his frame. He definitely worked so hard in the offseason, and that's another thing Thibodeau loved about him and Obi, is how hard they worked in the offseason. Quickley's coming off a second-team all-rookie, so he could have been satisfied, but instead he worked even harder than the Knicks imagined, and he's come back. And really, I think I may have given him, of all the Knicks players, I think he got my best grade. So, but yeah, the defense, he's very tenacious. He's not like a natural, like Miles McBride, who just loves to play defense. That's his thing. He takes great pride in it. Immanuel Quickley likes to score the ball and skip around after he hits a big 3-point shot. But Immanuel's still playing really hard-nosed because he knows that's how he gets on the court.
Yep, absolutely. And, it could be some credit to the development staff within the team as well. He's obviously got some vets to learn off. But just on that note, you're reporting Deuce McBride, Jericho Sims down to the G League, Mark, down for some reps, I suppose.
Yeah, on Tuesday night, the Westchester Knicks are playing in their home arena, which is in Bridgeport, Connecticut. But listen, Miles needs some reps. So does Jericho. I graded a nice grade for Jericho because he's exceeded expectations as the 58th pick, but I gave an incomplete to Miles. It looked like Miles was going to be in the rotation after that big Houston game, and then he got COVID, and then he just couldn't get his rhythm back, and Thibodeau gave up on him. So put him in the Westchester Knicks G League game tonight against Motor City. Get him 38 minutes. He needs some run, especially now with Kemba about to come back. He's not going to get in the game. So I'm glad the Knicks are using the G League like it's supposed to be used. And Jericho also. Again, there's three centers in front of him, although Nerlens Noel has been hurt so much. But Jericho needs to play a lot. And because I think he could be a future piece, if not an important piece, but a decent piece in a blockbuster deal.
Yep, absolutely. You and me both. Obviously, this topic on everyone's mouth right now, Mark, Julius Randle. It's been a roller coaster, like I said, in the last week. What can you tell us about the latest on Julius?
Well, Julius didn't talk to the media after each of the last two games in Boston and then after the Spurs game Monday night. So they finally made him available at practice in Tarrytown. I was not present, but my backup reports to me that it did not go well at all. He didn't shed light on any subject. He was very curt. Any question about his relationship with the fans, he responded, "I've already covered that," referring to his Instagram quote unquote apology. But that was written by the creative artist agency publicity team. It would have been really nice for Julius Randle to say it to the fans on camera before the microphones and notebooks, and he failed to do so. And if he struggles again against Dallas, he's going to hear the boos. I thought he didn't receive. I thought, considering how bad he was and how ineffective and how detached he was offensively, I didn't think he received as harsh a reaction as he could have. He definitely got boos in the fourth quarter after the turnover and also after the missed shot in the buzzer at the first half buzzer. And then there was, we're sitting in the 200 level in the press box, and I don't know if it came across on the TV, but there was a Julius Randle SUCKS chant that went on in the final minute. But it wasn't, considering how lousy he played in a 2-point performance, it could have been worse. And it might be worse against Dallas if he continues to struggle.
Yeah, look, the New York fan base are as passionate as any. You embrace them, they embrace you. It's a difficult situation right now. This has escalated quickly, Mark. Talking to a lot of fans, there's respect there for Julius, but at the same time, he does appear to be, mentally fragile. It's affecting his game. In terms of, the front office, Jim Dolan, things like that. Do you think there's any, apprehension, any regret in committing long term to Julius?
I think there has to be some regret. He doesn't look like an all-star player, and now the past two games, he doesn't look like he should start. He looks like a bench player who's just a role player who's, distributing the ball. That's my biggest concern right now. He's got to break out of this. He's got this mental block. He looked afraid in both second halves in Boston and against San Antonio. He looked afraid to create for himself. He looked timid. I know RJ had it going, but RJ had it going because Randle was just deferring to him. And I think it's going to be different. I think the coaching staff, even if you're missing shots, you still got to be aggressive. What happened in Boston and against the Spurs is he missed some shots and he got timid. And it worked against the depleted Spurs at home. Spurs playing the second night of a back-to-back. The Spurs with 5 rotation players out for COVID. it worked against them, but you're going to need all-star Julius to beat Dallas. Although Dallas
Mm.
won't have Porzingis, and they don't have a full strength either.
Yeah, and you talk about the first Boston game, the RJ Barrett buzzer beater, the missed free throws were another reflection of, by Julius and RJ, a reflection of the crowd and the moment getting to Julius, when it all started. And you're right, if this continues, it's going to be interesting. The organization is at somewhat of a crossroad in terms of, making decisions with the trade period coming up. There's been reports that the New York Knicks have inquired to Miles Turner, Jeremy Grant, and Ben Simmons earlier. Do you think there would be a trade market for Julius at this point in time?
Oh, I'm sure there's a market for him. The contract isn't a max deal. Uh, but regarding Jeremy Grant, we had written in the 2020 free agency, the Knicks made a play for Jeremy, and I don't think Jeremy was that interested, and the Knicks weren't willing to go as high as Detroit. Uh, but that showed at the time that the Knicks weren't sold on Julius Randle. And then last season happens, and they quickly do the contract extension, and now they have to live with this decision or die with this decision. So I think there's a lot of flux. Miles Turner obviously is a player they've liked for a long time. We've talked about it on your show about needing a stretch four or stretch five, a stretch big man to shoot a three-pointer when you have four centers who can't even shoot a 12 to 14 footer. So, that's of interest, and the Pacers are looking to break it up. So let's see what happens. Obi Toppin, unfortunately, I thought his trade value was going pretty nicely in terms of his stock being up, but he's also looked timid ever since he started, and he played that 45 minutes in Toronto. Then when he went to the bench and got very limited minutes, he has not looked the same either. He's also looks afraid to shoot the three-pointer. And he doesn't have that same mojo right now. And again, I wrote in my grades, and I didn't give him a great grade. He needs that creative point guard. We've talked about it. He needs a Kemba Walker to find him, and especially Derrick Rose had a good connection with him, I thought, before he got surgery. Immanuel definitely has a great connection with Obi, but Obi's a limited offensive player, and he needs a point guard to really help him. And in recent games, that hasn't been there.
Yeah, it seems like Derrick Rose was the main one to unlock Obi Toppin's game, and that's been a big part in that. But Tom Thibodeau, the way he obviously coaches as well, do you think that is having an impact on Obi's confidence?
Yeah, there's a little speculation that he played those 45 minutes in Toronto, and some people thought it was a great performance. Obviously not to Tom. In 45 minutes, he had 6 rebounds. That's not a lot of rebounds. He did score 19 points, but he's on the court almost the whole game. So it was a nice performance, but they got blown out. So, Tom cares not about the points you score, but how did you affect the game in terms of winning? And Obi had no effect on the team in terms of a victory that night in Toronto. So Randle and Mitchell come back from protocols, and then Toppin's getting less minutes than ever. He goes from 45 minutes to 9 minutes. It's got to be a slap in the face to Obi. And you're right, he probably lost some of his, confidence, thinking, boy, the coach was only playing me 45 minutes because he was desperate. So yeah, Obi's he has a strange skill set. Not strange, but it's a little unorthodox. And you need a coach that really believes in you and can get the most out of you. And the second half of the season will be fascinating to see how the minutes work with Julius and Obi.
Yep. So you mentioned the second half of the season. Obviously, it's a Leon Rose pick, Obi Toppin. Do you feel like they're happy to ride out the full year with Obi, or do you think he might be, expendable in a deal?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, even a Miles Turner deal. I've always thought that Obi would be a nice trade chip. I mean, last season his rookie year was kind of a dud, so he didn't have a powerful. Uh, he wasn't a powerful trade asset, but I think he's become a pretty good trade asset right now. And I do believe, especially when you have Randall locked up for $117 million, I do believe that Toppin has to be a trade chip in a big deal for a major impact player. There's no doubt about it, because I know. Listen, and I may have repeated this on the show right before the playoffs. I did a story saying that the coaching staff was concerned about how many minutes Toppin can play in the playoffs, that they may have to limit his minutes even further for defensive reasons. Turns out Toppin played very loose and was one of their best players in the playoffs, so his minutes actually went up a little bit in the playoffs. But Thibodeau just isn't completely sold on Obi Toppin. And management, listen, Leon Rose drafted him 8, so he's got a big vested interest. But I know Tom Thibodeau is not fully sold on Obi Toppin, and it shows by the minutes he gives him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, them getting on the same page, because we are trying to win at the same time as also develop young players, which is very hard to do. A lot of organizations, Mark, make a decision where they're going to go, and I think this trade deadline is going to show where this team is headed, which direction.
Well, it's going to be interesting because Tom Thibodeau is just going to want a piece to win now, and maybe someone like Brock Aller or Leon or William Wesley will maybe want a piece that will help in the future. But, listen, the Knicks are still on the verge of the play-in, even maybe 3 games out of the 6th seed, which is the automatic berth into the playoffs. You could bet the Knicks. I did the story. You could bet in New York now. You could go on your mobile app, and it works in New York. So you could get 5-1 odds to bet that the Knicks will make the playoffs. That's pretty good odds if you want to place some money on your Knickerbockers at 5-1. And if you want to go the opposite route and bet they won't make the playoffs, you're not going to win a lot of money. I believe you have to bet $8 to win $1, whatever the calculation is in the new betting terms. It's like 1 to 8 odds. So Vegas and these betting apps do not see the Knicks in the playoffs, which is the final 8 after play-in. That's how it's calculated. It's not being in the top 10 in the play-in situation.
Yep, yeah, and as always, bet responsibly, bet with your head, not with your heart. But yeah, Mark, down here, betting's been accessible for a long, long time. The New York Knicks were 41.5 season over under, and I was looking at it heavily. Obviously, they saw some concerns that we've seen. The New York Knicks, interesting enough, are 20-21, the exact same record as this season, last season, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy that when you look back, they were 20-21, and at that time people were still excited, and then they went on a big run to finish the season. Derrick Rose kept getting better. Randle kept up his all-star level play, even getting better as the season wore on, and they closed really strongly. Got a lot of lucky games where they played some undermanned teams, I thought, that had some COVID issues last season. The Knicks were very healthy last year in all respects. In fact, their starting lineup, I was looking at they had only like 10 or 11 starting lineups all season. The main one, once Robinson got injured, Noel became the center, and then the same 4 guys of Bullock, Payton, Barrett, Randle, so you had a lot of continuity last season. And, in the last 10 games, the Knicks have had like 6 or 7 starting lineups. So it's been chaos, although many teams are going through that. But yeah, last season, that's why it's almost like anticlimactic to see the Knicks this season and root for them, because last season was such a thrill. They had been such a laughing stock in the league, not even in a playoff race for 6 straight seasons. They were out of it on March 1st for the last 6 seasons entering last year. So they're 1 game under 500 last year at the 41 game mark in a 72 game season. and fans were thrilled that they were in the playoff race, just to be in a playoff race. Knicks are in a playoff race now, but no one cares. They want them to be number 6 or better and avoid this play-in.
Yeah, that has a lot to do with teams like the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Bulls shooting right up. But of course, then you've got teams like Atlanta that have fallen down. But as we approach the second half of the season, Mark, the return of Star J Barrett the other night, the New York Knicks decision makers. Obviously, he wasn't a Leon Rose pick, but what have you been hearing in terms of their, attachment to RJ? And I guess they would have been quite pleased the other night.
Yeah, they love so many things about RJ, but listen, he is streaky, and in grading him, you can't give him an A or A minus. I mean, his percentages are still down. He had a real rough stretch. He had those great 5 games early in the season, 20 plus points, dominated the game. Then he went through a prolonged shooting slump, and now he's back. And as Tom Thibodeau said last night, he's so good at driving and getting to the basket. And I think Tom has been concerned here and there about, well, if they double him, maybe he's not great at dishing it out. He's really not that creating for others that way. He's a scorer. You could see it. That was the scouting report coming out of Duke. And when he's going to the basket, he's going to score. And he's scoring. So now Tom is happy. But, there's going to be times where the scouting report is going to be, hey, we got to load up against RJ, not just Julius. And RJ is going to have to, find the open man. But he's got a lot of innate skill getting to the basket, some crafty moves, and he's become a better finisher this year. It's really fun to watch. And the fans are now all RJ all the time, chanting his name last night. It's just amazing. Listen, they loved him. I mean, they didn't love him last year. They really liked him last year. Now they love him. I mean, he's their favorite player. Sorry, Julius Randle. That's not happening this year for you.
Yeah, and it could be happening in the nick of time, Mark. We mentioned his contract situation right at the time when a decision have to be made on an extension. We just want to see this kind of RJ so that that decision becomes an easy one in terms of an extension. But Mark, I really appreciate your time. Is there anything else coming up in terms of coverage?
No, I mean, just if you guys could sign on and access the Knicks newsletter and see my Knicks report card for the midterm grades. It hits Thursday morning. But yeah, I'll be at the Garden for the Dallas Knicks game. Unfortunately, Kristaps has COVID, so there won't be that type of booing. I'm just hoping that there's not a lot of booing for Randle. I'm hoping. I feel you start to feel a little bad for the guy, even though he acted poorly at the press conference today. But you want to see him break out of this. You want to see Randle play aggressive, drive to the basket, not be worried about making a mistake. Because if he has another clunker, I think there'll be more boos and more chants that we heard in the final minute that I'd rather not repeat.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an awkward situation right now, and it's day to day. Bears watching, and KP Frank coming into the Garden. Prayers up to Kristaps. I did try to reach out and get them for an interview, but I know they're busy. But Mark, I really appreciate your time as always, and subscribe to the newsletter. I subscribed a few weeks back. Great work as always. Great work as always, Mark.
Appreciate it.
And we'll catch you again soon.
All right. Thanks, CT. Anytime.
Yep. Pleasure.